Hey everyone, you're back with Citywide Blackout, your home for music, movies, and more. I'm your host, Max Bowen. Well, if you're a fan of any of the Marvel TV shows, then odds are you've heard the work of my next guest, Zachary Kibbee. His work has been used in over 100 movies, shows, and ads. We talk all about this and the change that it allowed him to make, including quitting his day job and becoming a full-time musician. We also talk about his new album, Life in High Fidelity, and some of the new sounds he's utilizing, with much of the work done in his own home studio. It was a big investment, but one that has paid off, mainly in allowing him more freedom when it comes time to record. My next guest, well, he has a new album out, a podcast, and a whole lot more, because, damn, this guy's got an impressive resume. I am joined by Zachary Kibbee. Zachary, welcome to the show, man. It's great talking to you.
Hey, thanks, Max. How you doing? Great to be here. Appreciate it.
Man, I'm doing pretty good, doing pretty good given the whole situation.
Yeah, every day's a weird day, but a new day, and try to stay positive. That's my outlook anyway. So
there you go, man. There you go. Well, let's start off by talking about your new album breakdown podcast. You dropped this a little while ago, and this is a Patreon exclusive. So, folks, if you want to see if you want to hear this thing, you gotta be a supporter. How did this whole thing get started? And maybe give us a little, sneak peek as to what folks can expect in the podcast.
I've seen a lot of musicians and artists and YouTubers and stuff doing Patreon for the last few years, and I'd always wanted to kind of kickstart one, and I just never had the time. I've been on tour so much the last 4 years of my life, half or more of the year. So it just wasn't really in the stars then. And, given all the lockdown time and this other stuff. And I found myself with all this extra time, obviously. And so I was like, I'm going to start a Patreon and just to see what it's all about. And it's been pretty fun so far. But yeah, I wanted to do exclusive kind of fun stuff that, anybody can just put out music. And that's kind of the lowest tier of my Patreon is people can get, songs that they wouldn't otherwise not hear because they're unreleased songs. A lot of these songs are songs that have been used by like Victoria's Secret or like a TV show or something, but they were never released. And they just didn't really fit kind of the vibe necessarily of an album, but I think they're good songs. So I wanted to get that music out into the world. And I thought Patreon was a perfect way to do that. And so, I wanted to add other stuff so people can also get, free merch. Basically, you sort of are banking money via Patreon to receive free merch, and every couple months I'll send out when I get new shirts or hoodies because we're getting into winter, or right now I'm working on vinyl, but so people will get vinyl. But additionally, I wanted to do something that I thought would be more interconnective for people, and because I feel like that is really fun for the fans. It's also a lot of fun for me, and I really enjoy doing it. So I decided to do a podcast where I talk about the songs. And then I also was I want to break down my album. And that's when I started the album breakdown. So I'm going to go track by track, probably release one every couple weeks for the next, 10 weeks or 20 weeks, I guess, because there's 10 songs. And just talk about the recording process and how I wrote the song, or if I co-wrote it with somebody or if somebody else produced it, and just the steps. And specifically on the first track, I produced the song. So I have all of the music. And so I was able to just kind of here's what the bass sounds like just by itself. And here's all of the vocal harmonies that you really maybe don't notice in the full song. But when you break it down and you just hear that, it's whoa, there's a 4-part stacked harmony. And that's always fun for me to get to kind of show off a little bit, so to speak. But yeah, so I look forward to doing that. And I'm going to talk to the other couple guys who produced on the album and try to get them to send me just the guitar solo or just the vocal track or something, so I can sort of have that to give to people if they want to hear. And I've actually already gotten some pretty fun feedback about oh, thanks for doing that. I'm trying to break into the industry, so it's really fun to hear your little inside secrets, of somebody I've recorded, I don't know, hundreds of songs. So, with a lot of people, so I've gotten okay at it. But I think, and I've learned a lot from way better people than me. There's a dude on my album that produced it has a Grammy. So, I learned a lot from him and some other guys. So
that's cool.
Yeah, man. It's fun. I look forward to doing it more.
Nice. Any YouTubers or podcast hosts that you are religiously following?
I listen to Bill Burr a lot when I'm on tour. I love Bill Burr. He can do no wrong in my opinion. He's hilarious. Joe Rogan's a good one too. He'll get put on in the van when we're driving around. But as far as I'm kind of just busy doing what I do. So I'm more of like a TV watcher. Unfortunately, I'm a little bit more basic than the podcasting world. But I definitely have gone through phases of listening to, Matthew Berry's fantasy football podcast every day and stuff like that. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I love Joe Rogan's podcast.
Oh yeah, he's great.
So like he asks some great questions. He just is on point with that. His questions are very like insightful too.
Totally, yeah. He's very poignant and he's a very reasonable person. So it's like nice to hear like his opinions on things. I think he comes from a pretty reasonable place most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think even sometimes he'll say some things that you're just not going to agree with, but you want to listen because you want to know why he thinks this way or why he says this one thing.
Yeah, and I think he's earned that respect, I think, as a person to where you maybe would listen to a dissenting opinion of his or two. Yeah, one episode that sticks out in my mind is I remember we were doing a drive back from San Diego to LA, and we put on one podcast about a guy who was theorizing that our like carbon dating system is all wrong and that like human beings were much more advanced than we thought before the last ice age happened. And that's like where all the pyramids actually came from and all that stuff. Cause like humans were just much better than and then they all died out because of the ice age. And then then started over again. And then like got to where we are now. I was like, that's such an interesting theory. And like, I sort of like fully believe it now just cause it was like so well done. And like, I don't know. We were also all drunk, listening to a podcast while the driver drove us home. It was like after a gig. So it was like,
you wake up like, what was he talking about? I completely forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you rewind that, please?
Yeah, really. Can we listen to that again? I just totally spaced out. So speaking of tours, of course, no one's been touring, obviously, for the past 8 months. I'm really curious how your career got impacted by the whole pandemic.
Oh man, well, thankfully I got a short tour in at the end of January into early February. I did 3 weeks in Sweden and the UK. A couple weeks later, it was like we're shutting down. And I was like, oh man, and I played another band called Bullets and Octane. Between that group and my stuff, I'm touring, like I said, about 6 months of the year. So it was really weird to all of a sudden be like, okay, I guess I'm not doing anything in May, in July, in August, in October, in November. So those are all free now when they weren't going to be free. We had some shows booked and some festivals booked, and I was working on my next couple tours through the year, and yeah, it's been weird. I'm a solo artist, so I don't really rehearse that much with a band, and a lot of my touring is overseas. So like I have a local band that lives in Sweden that tours with me when I tour in Europe, and so we'll get together and rehearse once. But my other band, we rehearsed and hung out a lot and went to bars and went to shows and played local shows, and it's weird not really seeing them that much. To me, it's not so much that touring has like affected me. It's like, it's weird not seeing my friends as often, it's more of a personal thing for me than that. I mean, thankfully I have a studio in my house, so I'm still working on music all the time. So I feel like I'm getting my fill that way. Obviously I'm not getting the live show fill, but it's really, I miss hanging around with people. And after the gig, the gig is it's great. I love it, but I miss kind of the 6-hour drives in the hotels and hanging with my buddies and doing shots at the merch booth and stuff like that. And, more than the gigs themselves in a weird way.
Yeah. It's all like little things, pulling up to the venue, seeing the first band take the stage, getting like your first beer of the night. It's like all those like small pieces that kind of go into the whole show experience. Totally.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Those are the moments you're left thinking about, really.
Mm-hmm. Someday it'll come back.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So how have you kept yourself busy? I mean, like, I know you mentioned that you're working on the new music, and of course you've got the Patreon up and running. How else do you kind of keep yourself going as an artist?
Man, that's a tough question. I just keep doing it. I write about 50 or 60 songs a year and record most of them. And it's just I think it's little pieces of different stuff. It's not, I'm not working on my Patreon all the time. I'll work on it for a few hours on a Monday. And then, I'm co-writing a song because I'm a producer. I produce other bands and other artists' stuff. So I'll co-write a song with, my buddy Tom Rhodes. He's a Bay Area artist. He's a great dude. We write a lot of songs together. So I'll write with him on a Tuesday, and then I'll work on that song. So I'm doing a lot of other sort of behind the scenes stuff that isn't just my music or just Bullets and Octane. I feel like I'm busier this year than I have been in previous years. A weird silver lining of not touring is that I've been just sort of more focused on other avenues. I don't know. Adapting. That's the one word answer. Adapting.
It's a good thing, I think it's definitely a good thing that you lose the touring, you lose the shows, but you find all these other things to kind of fill your time.
Yeah, avenues. Yeah, you have to do it. I think, I have some friends who made their earnings, they made their living off of just touring. And that's, they took a hard hit on this year and probably into next year. And our booking agent's telling us stuff like probably 2022 is when the world's going to happen again. And it's like, man, that's crazy, and I hope it's sooner than that. I hope that that's just like a sort of a conservative guess as opposed to like a more aggressive or realistic type of a guess. I don't know. But, thankfully that isn't the case for me. So, touring was just a part of my life while being an awesome part, but it wasn't like the way I paid rent, thankfully. I have a couple friends, like I said, who that's kind of their gig. I live in LA. I know lots of musicians and a lot of them are touring, but yeah, you're right. It's a tough gig because you got to be playing in front of 800 people a night, most nights to really make money. But there's ways. I'm pretty good at squeezing a dollar out of a nickel, I've been told. So I find a way to come back with some cash after even a small tour for 3 weeks and flying my band over and stuff. But it's hard. You got to really love it and really want to do it. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of touring, you have been all over the place. You have played I'm curious what your first overseas tour was like.
See, that would have been 2017. We did Sweden for a week and then the UK for 2 weeks, I think. And it was insane. Well, first of all, it was August and it was freezing cold. What is that about? It's just always cold. It was like 50 degrees in Sweden in August. It's like, geez. But no, it was great. It was definitely a unique experience. And, I learned a lot from that first overseas tour. You don't just get to throw your amp in a van or a truck or something and go. There's a lot more stuff you have to deal with. Not outside of just getting permits to even be in the country for the couple weeks you're going to be there, talking to all the other bands that are sort of your opening bands, like, can we use your gear? Is there house gear? Should we rent gear? Like, Bullets and Octane's manager lives in Sweden and he has some gear and had connections to get us gear. And it's like, that's great. And then packing, I've learned so much how to pack for a tour now. I pretty much, if I had to go on tour tomorrow, I'm packed already. I sort of have that separated and you learn how to do stuff. I remember one tour, me and the guitar player, I theorized, I was like, I bet we could ship our bass and our guitar as one item as opposed to it being because I was like, it's 50 pounds. You can because that's how you squeeze a dollar out of a nickel. You can save $80 per flight, right? This little insider secret. And so I just taped our cases together. We were a little bit razor thin in the beginning of those first couple tours. So I was like, I bet I could do that. So I taped our 2 cases together and it was 49 pounds. So it was one bag. It was one checked bag.
Yeah, man.
I've learned a lot from touring, I think.
But this is all important stuff. Like you said, it's all those little things you got to do, getting the permits, if you're going to be there for a while, getting the visas and, everything else that you got to do, where are we going? How do we get there? Do we know how to get there?
Yeah. I remember when I learned the difference between the M roads, the A roads, and the B roads in England and Scotland. And there is a difference. We did a tour in an RV once, and I learned real quick that we wanted to avoid the B roads because those are the kind of small dirt roads and country roads where sometimes it's only about as wide as one car.
Oh, geez.
And it's a two-way two-way roads. So there's a truck coming down and you have to pull off into the 4-foot tall grass, or, you have to learn to like stop because there's bricks on either side of the road. So you have to stop and let the other car go. And so those are the B roads. The A roads are like a regular road. And then the M roads are the motorways or the highways or freeways. So that's where you can, really haul ass. so like I've learned like weird stuff like that. Yeah. You learn the more numbers there are on the road, you don't want to take that road.
Lesson for the day, kids. Write this one down. One thing that a lot of my friends tell me when they tour overseas is you got to be really careful to like keep your nose clean, because getting in trouble over there, it's more than just getting like a ticket or whatever. Sometimes you can get just kicked out of the country.
Yeah,
and in
for
that
sure.
case, that's a whole tour just scrapped, all those dates lost, the money lost, all because of this one thing you did. So it's like be really careful that you just don't mess around.
Yeah, as I say, you can get into a little bit of trouble, but the trouble that you get into there is a little different. They have lower drinking limits, but when we've toured overseas, we've always brought a tech that drove, or somebody who tour managed, so they would kind of deal with that stuff. Because I think the legal drinking limit's 0.05, in England, and I think it's 0 in Scotland. So if you take one shot, you can't drive for like a couple hours.
Wow.
And so, stuff like that. And then we're all dressed up like long-haired dudes with ripped jeans and boots on and tattoos and patches on our jackets and stuff. So, if you're a cop, you're probably looking at guys like us. So you're right. You have to be a little bit more careful and not do illegal stuff. I mean, I'm not really one to partake anyway, so it's fine. I do my fair share of drinking, but in the other cases, I steer clear anyway. And so does most of the people I work with. So thankfully, it's a little bit safer there anyway. You got to be smart about it when you're going to party.
Exactly. Because like I said, it's not just getting busted for like a DUI or whatever. It is, okay, now you've got to go back home and you are out like however many hundreds of dollars that you were going to get over this thing. And maybe the touring company says we're not going to work with you anymore and so forth. So it's just one of those things that you got to, like, well, you can't also treat it like a party because it's like work, basically.
It's not. It's work, yeah. It's definitely work, and I don't know. I've toured enough now to where, I have my own set of rules. Who wants to be hungover every day? Right? I don't. So, you figure out how to treat your body right. Because otherwise, if you do a 5 or 6 week tour or longer, and if you're a singer, forget about it. You can't live like that. Yeah. And that's actually a weird side effect of touring and being in a rock band, is people assume that you're kind of, party animals and every night's a Saturday. And a lot of times it is, but sometimes you can't. For me, I sing sort of at the top of my range most of the time. So my voice needs to be in tip-top shape. And thankfully it holds up pretty good. But if I was drinking every day, it wouldn't. Mm-hmm. I'd sound like shit. And I'm a professional. I want to be a professional. I'm not a party kid. I'm a professional musician. So you toe the line between being a party animal, which I also love doing, but you're there to do, I hate to say the word job, but you're there to do a job and you want to do it well. And I want to do it well. The worst thing I could imagine is a video showing up on the internet of me sounding like crap at a show.
Exactly.
It'd be embarrassing. I wouldn't want that.
Being a professional musician, how do you define that?
Paying your bills, I guess, is that's like the actual definition probably. But like you said, touring can lose money, especially in the beginning. A lot of younger bands that go out and they're not making money on a gig. But I think if you consider that to be an investment in your company, so to speak, then I think that still makes you a professional. But, taking it seriously and finding a way to squeeze out some cash from it, I guess. That's not the main goal, but if you want to do it for your life, you have to sort of make money at it, and that's unfair, but it's the rules of life. So that's a roundabout way of answering the question there, I think.
One thing I was really, really curious about. Now, I read that you've had your work used in 100 TV shows, movies, commercials, and ads. Holy crap. That's really amazing because most people that I know that have their work in those formats, it's like one or two things. You've got quite a bit more. How did this first start?
Yeah, I'm really fortunate for that. It actually all started with my life motto, which is work hard and be nice to people. That was rule number one. My mom kind of put that into my brain as a kid, and I actually have a poster that says that in my studio. It started that way. So the way that came to fruition, though, is that I was playing gigs around LA, and I met and became friends with a guy who worked at the Viper Room named Joseph Holliday. And if you follow my work, you know that he's produced most of my stuff. But he was working at Viper Room, and one day we were chit-chatting, and I was like, hey, I'm going to run to the store. Do you want anything? And he's like, yeah, get me a Cliff Bar. I was like, sure, I'll get you a Cliff Bar. Like, this was the day we met, pretty much. So even before we were really friends. And so I came back with a Cliff Bar, and he's like, oh, man, you actually got me a Cliff Bar. I was like, yeah, you asked for one, so I got you one. Like, why not? He's like, well, cool, man, thanks. And then, I started hanging around Viper Room a little bit more and playing gigs and stuff, and then we got to chatting and becoming friends. And I was telling him that my old band was looking to record an album, and he's like, oh, well, I have like a studio in my house, and we can record some songs. And he showed me his stuff, and I thought it was great. And then, we recorded an album there. And then while I was there mixing that album and hanging out with him, he's like, dude, check this out. I got this song on this TV show. And I was like, holy shit. How did you do that? Like, that was never even a thing in my brain. I didn't ever think that was a thing. I thought that, like, famous people got songs and TV shows and stuff. And I was like, dude, that's amazing. So he told me about this woman named Julie, who is a friend of his that worked at a company called Platform Music. And I sort of dove on it right away. I was like, well, what are they looking for? Like, because I was writing my first sort of EP, actually, what ended up being my first EP, and a couple other songs just outside of this other band. And he's like, well, there's sort of, like blues rock is always the thing they want. And they're looking for artists like that. And I was like, well, dude, I like have this whole bunch of like bluesy rock songs that I've been working on. I love the blues. I opened for B.B. King when I was 17 years old at the Abbot Kinney Music Festival. I've always been like a blues guy, blues bands and those types, rock bands. I first started playing bass. I wasn't even a guitar player. So I like, all the boom, 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 just for 10 minutes, like whatever, I could do that. Like, but I wanted to infuse it more with rock and kind of the stuff I was working on. So he listened to the demos I had, and he's like, yeah, let's do it. So we recorded the songs, and then he like sent them over to Julie over there at Platform Music, and she's like, these are great. And then nothing happened for like 8 months. Out of the blue, January 2nd, actually, 2014, I got an email and a phone call from Julie, and she said, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. wants to use your song on a TV show. And I was like, great. That sounds awesome. That's like super cool. And then she's like, yeah, we're getting a little bit more bites on some of your stuff, and people want more. I only had like, I think 3 songs. They had 3 songs of mine that we wrote and recorded. They're like, you should maybe do a couple more songs. So me and Joseph got together and wrote a couple more songs. And October that year, I quit my job. Major League Baseball used my music, Victoria's Secret, Microsoft, a handful of TV shows, a bunch of stuff. The Drop is a movie that used one of my songs. And that was like all in that first kind of year. After it sort of just snowballed and took off, and a lot of music supervisors wanted to use my music and stuff, and that was awesome. And so Joseph and I started writing more music and recording more music, and out of that came my first EP, a couple of my first singles, my first full-length album, Songs from the Mud. He produced the whole album, and he produced like half of Life in Low Fidelity. We're great friends, and we work together all the time. And when I wanted to get my own studio set up, he was right there to guide me, and he's taught me so much about music and life and being a good person. So I'm really grateful for him. But that's basically how this all sort of started, and the fruits of our labor really worked, I think.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. being your first one, that's huge, man. I mean, like that, like of all things, that like one of like the biggest Marvel shows happening picks you up. That's pretty impressive, dude.
Dude, it was really cool. I was super stoked. Yeah, it was insane. I think they've used 3 or 4 of my songs. I've had a song on, I think, like every Marvel show, like not episode, but every like series. I've had like at least one song, and that's really cool. They like me over there, I guess.
Nice. Hey, it's if you're gonna be partnering with someone, it's good to be with Marvel.
Totally.
Now, when you heard that your stuff was going to be in the episode, did you like tell everyone, hey, hey guys, watch a show this day, this time, because I'm in the episode?
Shit, yeah, I did. Of course I did.
I love that. Because
posted about it all over the place. I was so excited.
Thing.
Yeah, my family like went out to like a celebratory dinner that probably cost as much as I got paid. It was, it was a big deal. I mean, I remember that date specifically because it was sort of a game changer for my life. It's such an interesting way of earning a living, I think, in music. And I'm so grateful for it. And it's really afforded me the opportunity to really work on music full time and tour. And, most bands, they go on tour, they're taking 2 or 3 weeks off work. I'm not. And, I'm so grateful for that. It's fantastic. I can't even use words to describe how fortunate I feel in my life in the last 6 years.
I want to ask about being flexible as a musician. You tour, you write your music, of course. You have the production side of things. You have the work with the TV shows and the movies and so forth. How important is it being flexible to making music a job?
1,000%. It's I think the most important thing. I mean, adaptation is huge. Adapt or die. It's so hard to make a living and a name for yourself, if that's what you want, in music as a songwriter or a recording artist or a touring band. You have to hit the jackpot. I don't need to hit the jackpot. I think I'd be happy if I could play music for my whole life. And that's what I do for work. And so now more than ever, there's 15 or 16 different avenues you can take to make that happen. And I was grateful to have some good guidance along the way as a kid. My good friend Matt Rose, who is the person who got me into music, his dad actually always said to me, songwriting is king. Be a good songwriter or always get your songwriting credits. And because he was sort of around music a lot as a kid, and his brother managed some bands and Alice Cooper and stuff, I think. And so he sort of knew what he was talking about. So I had good guidance there. But yeah, it's so important to be able to produce music, not just your own. And it's important to, I think, play multiple instruments. And I think it's important to be a nice person and to be a good person. That's a thing that you don't hear about as much. But inside the industry, you hear what's the hang like? Is it a good hang? That's a phrase you hear when you're talking about touring with a band or an artist or bringing somebody on to play bass for you or something. Are they a good hang? Yeah. All right, cool. Are they the best bass player around? Maybe not, but you're not going to hate them in 2 weeks of being sitting next to them in the van every day or wherever, But yeah, I mean, it's so important to be able to write songs and play a bunch of instruments, I think, or a couple of them really well, I think. I don't know. To be able to produce or have a vision of how you want your music to be. Or
let's talk about the new album, Life in Low Fidelity. I mean, I think this is an absolutely amazing album. I think Unbroken is probably one of my favorite song. Did you go in any new directions with this album?
Yeah, I my last album's a little bit Songs from the Mud, that is. It's a little bit more sort of straight ahead. It's all very real sounding drums. I mean, real drums. It's mostly all real drums anyway. But I didn't do samples over it as much, and it was a little bit more raw and organic. And it was all here's the rhythm guitar, and here's the lead guitar, and here's the guitar melody, and here's the bass line, and here's the vocals and the harmonies, and maybe there's some keys or something in there. But with this album in particular, as I was writing songs that I knew would eventually be in the album, I've written, I don't know, 100 songs between my last album and this one or more, and it's more about picking the ones that I think fit the best. But a couple of these I was really gearing towards this will be good on my next album. And I wanted it to be that way. And a couple of them I wrote that I was this will be good for my next album. And then they turned out to suck. And so they didn't make it onto the album. And you can hear those on my Patreon. Yeah, I really wanted to be a little bit more of a modern step, a little bit more of a modern approach for this album. So there's a lot more kind of hip hop drum samples and digital sounding stuff. I mean, you mentioned Unbroken. When you listen to that, there's all kinds of strings and pads and other things that are obviously not guitars in the song. And other kind of really warped digital kind of Ableton-based samples and things like that, where you're sort of distorting noises to make new noises, and that's always been something I liked, and I really wanted to accentuate that a lot more on this collection of songs that ended up being this album, because I think you can't just write the same album over and over again, nor do I want to. And it's 2020. I don't want to write an album that sounds like it came out in 1978.
Now, did you produce this in-house? Because I think you mentioned that you have your own studio.
Mm-hmm. So Life in Low Fidelity, I did soup to nuts in my studio. The other 9 songs on the album, a lot of them I would record like the guitars and bass and vocals at my place, or I would record them with in another studio. I think I was in 4 or 5 different studios for this album. Right, and most of the songs are written, or not most, about half the songs have a co-writer on them. So a lot of times that co-writer was the producer as well, and so they would produce the song in their studio. And so it's just kind of bouncing around all over the place. But I sort of modeled my studio after my good friend Joseph's studio, and he produced about half this album. And we have pretty much all of the same hardware. So it sounds exactly the same because it's, the same preamp and the same EQ and the same compressor and the same microphone from the same guitar and the same guitar player. So it's going to sound, so there is continuity in the album. It doesn't sound like it's 15 different studios, even though it's like 5 different studios.
One of the things that I get talking to musicians who have their own studio is they love having the ability to just spend as much time as they want on the song. Shit, they don't have to watch the clock saying, okay, we got X amount of dollars, which means we can buy X amount of hours, so we got to be done. What do you say are the ups and downs of having that kind of freedom?
The only downside of it, I think, is not being able to know when it's done. It's like a painter who just keeps painting on the canvas over and over and over again, and you end up with this thick, goopy mess. You can do that in music for sure. So that's the only downside. Otherwise, I like working in my studio with my shirt off in my underwear because I had an idea at 4 a.m. and I just come into my studio, my computer's already on, and I just fire up everything and I go, and I built an isolation box so I can record guitar amps in my studio without messing up, or pissing off the neighbors. The day that I was able to stop recording hourly was, I'll never, ever go back to that ever in my life. And I'm a pretty fast recorder. I can record most things in 1 or 2 takes, especially guitar or bass. Very rarely do I take more than 15 minutes to record a bass line or 10 minutes to record a bass line. It just doesn't, I just have been doing it long enough. I know what I want to do, and I get the sound I want and I do it. I probably spend more time deciding whether or not to use a pick or to use flat wounds or round wound strings, because I have different basses with different stuff. And that's what takes more time than actually recording it. But yeah, hourly recording, man, it's a travesty to music. It's a really, really easy way to just destroy a good song because you didn't give yourself the hours to change things. That's been made evident to me just looking back and listening to older recordings from other bands I was in, or even some of my early stuff. But that's a big piece of advice I think I could give out to a band is, if you're going to record an album, find somebody that will record the album for a price. They won't record you by the hour because you're going to do yourself a disservice, I think, in that way. Yeah, it might cost you a little bit more, but I don't know. Or
just go your route and build your own studio because that
yeah.
Way, if you wake up like 2 a.m, you're like, I'm going to go work on the song.
That is true. I mean, it might be a little bit more expensive on the initial startup. I think I spent $14,000 or $15,000 in one day to get my studio set up, but that's because I wanted to go with the exact stuff I knew I wanted. Sort of, I don't want to say more professional setup, but a more professional setup. But you can get into the recording world in your own home for a couple $1,000s, and that's what you'd spend on your album anyway. Might sound like dog shit though, because you don't know how to mix stuff yet, but you'll learn, baby. You'll learn. Just do it. Hey, you're not going to get better by not doing it.
Exactly. And you're not going to get better by paying someone else to do it either. You may as well learn some things yourself, because you never know when a worldwide virus will shut everything else down.
Yeah, it's true. Hopefully not again. Yeah, really. Hopefully this is a more rare occasion than we think it is.
Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't happen a bunch, but that's just one possible scenario. So what is going to be next for you?
Man, that's a tough question. I don't really know. I mean, this album just came out. I've got a couple things coming up. I got a live show that's going to be on, I think, December 4th. I'm going to be doing like a streaming live show. Other than that, I'm just trying to sort of figure out, we're game planning for 2021, and if at all possible, and trying to just figure out the next step. I'm just going to keep writing and living my life and putting out music and enjoying the beautiful LA weather and my yard and my life. And we'll see. I don't know. I mean, other than that, I don't really have too big of plans right now. It's kind of, we're all sort of on hold, I think, and I don't want to make a plan and then be devastated when I can't do it. So I'm sort of on pause right now.
Well, Zach, man, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. And for the folks at home, if you want to learn more about Zach, you go to Zachary Kibbee, KIBBEE.com. Give us the socials, too.
Yeah, I'm pretty much at Zachary Kibbee on everything. I have a weird enough name to where I was the first one to get to everything. So, yeah, Instagram, I'm just at Zachary Kibbee. Yeah, it's 2 B's and 2 E's at the end there. Usually when you start, by the time you get to Zachary K.I., I usually show up, so that's good. Yeah, I'm on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, Amazon, all of the streaming services. Twitter is, I think, Zachary Kibbee. Facebook.com/Zachary Kibbee. Pretty easy to find. IMDb.com/Zachary Kibbee. You know, if you want to see some songs that or shows my songs have been on. Yeah, pretty easy to find. YouTube.com/Zachary Kibbee, I think. Easy.
I like this. Right. Well, yeah. Zachary, thanks again, man, and definitely looking
Thank you.
forward
I
to
appreciate
the next project.
Appreciate the time. Anytime you want to have me on, I'd love to come and chat and talk shop.
Definitely, man. Definitely.
Hey guys, what's going on? This is Brian Murphy from One Time Mountain, and you're listening to Citywide Blackout with Max Bowen.
Rock on.
Hey everyone, Max Bowen from Citywide Blackout here. Well, it's that time of the year again. In just a few months, the annual Rhode Island Author Expo returns. This event brings together more than 100 authors from all genres. Now, this year will be a lot different, because like so many other events, they decided to cancel the physical one in the interest of public safety. But that doesn't mean the show doesn't happen. In fact, this year it's going all virtual, with panels, author coffee clutches, and a whole lot more. And once more, I'll be the MC of this wonderful event. Now, the whole thing happens on December 5th, and you should definitely check out riauthorexpo.com for more information and a complete list of events. I'll see you there. All right, folks, that brings the episode to a close. You can follow the show on Facebook under Citywide Blackout and Twitter and Instagram under Citywide Max. Listen to the show on Podbean, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, and every Saturday at 10 p.m. on Boston Free Radio. To close things out, I've got one of the tracks from the new album called Somewhere to Put My Gold. As always, keep those ears open.